If you're someone who just recently got their first Neopixel lightsaber, or maybe you just need a little bit of assurance on how to properly put the blade into the hilt, this video is just for you. There's a lot of different Neopixels out there with different blade sizes, so it can all be a little overwhelming, but I'm going to make this incredibly simple and easy for you. I have a few different sabers laid out here, 2 of them being replicas, 1 of them being a thin neck, as well as 1 non-replica saber, several different tools, and retention screws, and of course the blade. All of these can be found at KyberSabers, and they're all great examples of what you will most commonly run into when putting your blade into the hilt. Starting at the top with the non-replica, this is the Starlight, and you can see here on the back we have 2 open slots, which is where these retention screws will go. On this particular hilt, you will find the retention screws only on one side, top and bottom. This right here is what's called an Allen tool, and it will be the most commonly used tool to put your screws into your hilt and tighten the blade. Regardless of whatever tool that you use to tighten down your retention screws, it's all the same exact process. So I typically drop the screw in, grab my Allen tool, twist it, and get it set into the threading so it doesn't fall out. And the most important thing is making sure that your blade can go all the way down, pushing the pins down in the hilt without any friction from these screws before you tighten it. So with my hand on the blade, pulling the hilt towards the blade, these are both fully connected, and I can ensure that there is no wiggle room, and I can go ahead and start tightening these screws down with my Allen wrench. You don't need to overkill it, but don't be afraid to make indents on your blade because it's going to happen. It's just inevitable. These screws will indent your blade to some degree, but it's fine. Just make sure that there is no wiggle room between the blade and the hilt, and you've got it set in perfectly. Once you've got it to where the Allen wrench and the retention screw don't turn anymore without giving it excessive force, you've got it to where it needs to be. I'm going to go ahead and remove the blade now. Just take your Allen wrench, twist to the left. You really only need to give it a couple of spins before it comes loose, and it comes right out. Next up, I'm going to go ahead and install the blade onto this Luke saber. Thin neck sabers are often the most tedious to work with just because thin necks offer the least amount of security for your blade. You can see that this saber is a little bit different already because it only has 1 retention screw at the emitter. Once again, I'm pulling on both the blade and the hilt at the same time with one hand to make sure that they're making full contact and the pins are being pushed down. Now, if you feel a little bit of wobble with a thin neck, that's perfectly normal. It happens quite a lot. They're really the only sabers that are going to give you a good amount of wobble and kind of instability with the blade. It's very common, so you don't need to worry about it too much. Moving on to the last example, I have this cow saber here. You're going to notice this one's a little bit different for a couple of reasons. One being because there are 2 retention screws on each side of this hilt, top and bottom, and these screws are a little bit smaller than the ones that these sabers take. I'm going to go ahead and once again hold the blade and the hilt together, making sure that they're making full contact. I'm going to ignite the saber to make sure that it's working properly and that there's no glitches going on with the blade. I'm going to go ahead and tighten these down. But I'm only going to be using the screws on the front side of the hilt. The reason I'm doing that is because with all the pressure coming from these 2 and these 2 on different sides, I find personally that it makes the blade wobble more rather than just having all the pressure on one side. If, however, you find that it's easier and more effective for you to use both sides, then go ahead and do it. It's not wrong. It's all up to a personal preference. I'm going to go ahead and take it out now. Give it a few spins is really all it takes, and this blade will slide right out of this hilt, just like so.